And welcome back, everybody, to Double Down with Breslo, where we have another great guest in the business of sports betting. On Double Down, we cover everything regarding the business of sports betting, and we love having young entrepreneurs on the show, and we've got a great one today. That's Dean Sisun. He is the co-founder and CEO at Profit Exchange, which I believe is the first exchange wagering platform launched in the U.S. Exchange wagering, of course, is where players can play directly against other players rather than against the house. So Dean's here to explain it all to us. Welcome, Dean.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Quick, maybe adjustment in how you phrase that. We are the first fully regulated betting exchange, which we very much hang our hats on. There have been a couple who have come and gone, but they were not regulated. So this is the first one you could trust, I'll say.
Nice. So these others, are you saying that people just kind of put these up on the internet to allow people to start betting against each other, hoping that it was somehow legal?
They, I'll say, found loopholes in how to operate their exchanges. They were legitimate, but they were not regulated by any body in the United States. There was one that was just for horse racing, and then there was another one back 15 years ago or so that had a lot of sports, but it was not a fully regulated platform by any means. PASPA was repealed in 2018, and then that's when regulation really took hold.
Yeah, the horse racing one I remember hearing about. Remind me who that was, a larger company that brought that, right?
Betfair, yeah, that one was Betfair.
Okay.
The other one, the big one, was Trade Sports. They were 15 years ago, I'd say. Roughly.
And was that like a kind of an offshore situation?
I'm not entirely positive where they were headquartered, but it was very popular in the US for a period of time. Ultimately, they didn't succeed because they had liquidity issues. They had a lot of markets up. They didn't have, I think they overbuilt the product experience as opposed to starting small and then expanding out with liquidity and scaling up an exchange. But I'm not sure where they were headquartered exactly. I don't know exactly the details on how they were operating, but I know they are not operating any longer.
Yeah, well, and if they weren't regulated, then I guess the legality of it was pretty questionable, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Just kind of perhaps under the theory that, hey, all we're not taking sports bets. We're just sitting back and allowing the public to communicate directly with each other and providing a platform for that.
Basically, you also run into the issue of, how do I know my money is safe? I mean, look what happened in crypto recently. You also run into the issue of, how do I know that I'm going to be paid out on my bets, right? It kind of it snowballs when you take in customer money and you're not regulated. It's just not, gets a little dicey.
Yeah. No, that middleman is absolutely critical, which is essentially the role that the Profit Exchange, I would imagine, takes, and we'll get into that. But I just had this experience with StubHub and was thinking about it. Was looking at concert tickets for Taylor Swift. I'm a big Taylor Swift fan, but I loved her. I loved her in the country days. So not quite as excited about this new tour, but everybody's just raving about this tour, and ticket prices are just ridiculous. I mean, she's doing 6 shows at SoFi Stadium here in LA, all sold out. The cheapest ticket on StubHub is $900. That's for sitting in the worst possible seat behind the stage in the last row is $900. So for the heck of it, I decided to go on Craigslist and see, you know what, maybe there's something cheaper on Craigslist. And sure enough, there's people on there selling for half the price. And everything now is electronic tickets, right? So you can't go meet the person, exchange the tickets. So I'm like, all right, how am I going to, are you going to send me the tickets first, or am I sending you the money first? And the guy basically says, well, he was just, I think it was a scam, bottom line. But he's basically saying that, well, you can send me half of the money first, then I'll send you the tickets, and then you can send me the other half of the money. I'm just thinking, yeah, right. I mean, there's just no assurance. I send this guy my money, and I've got no, and that's the important role that StubHub plays, right, is essentially kind of an escrow where they're in the middle and the guy sends the tickets to them and I send the money to them and they're kind of holding it and they're my guarantee. And it's the same thing with a bet. You know, you could bet with anybody on the internet through Facebook or whatever, but who's to say the guy is going to pay you when you win? And I would imagine, is that a fair way of saying you guys are the StubHub of sports betting?
That is a very good analogy. It basically spot on. On StubHub, people buy tickets from, I believe, first like a primary distributor, and then they go sell them on StubHub, right? StubHub's more a secondary marketplace. But with that analogy that you just went through, with the StubHub being the intermediary between two peers and they hold the money in escrow, that is exactly what we do. However, what you can do is imagine if StubHub had the ability to have users buy the initial ticket there, not just a resale. So you can get it as soon as it's distributed. That's what we are.
Right. And of course you take a fee, but hopefully not the onerous fees that StubHub takes, because it is incredible what they take. I'm a big concert goer, so I pay attention to this kind of stuff. But I mean, they're charging both sides a fee, and when all said and done, they're taking about 30%. So when somebody buys $2,000 tickets for Taylor Swift, they're getting 600 of that.
I'm in the wrong business. Oh my God.
Yeah. It's insane. It's and a lot of competitors have come up. You know, there's Vivid Tickets and a number of others, but SeatGeek, but you know, no, everybody seems to be kind of charging about the same too. You know, Ticketmaster's gotten into the business too, but yeah, I don't know why somebody hasn't been able to come in and undercut that by about 50%. But let's talk about your fees, because I mean, I know that's one of the biggest. I went on your website. That's one of the biggest things that you're touting to potential players is that, hey, whereas you got to pay 110 to win 100 typically on the other sites, we're going to make that cheaper for you. So talk about how much cheaper you're able to make it.
We like to call it a no-brainer, right? If you're gonna, it's the same exact product that you're buying, right? That bet. But typically you'll see sports bet lines of -101, -102 on a spread bet as opposed to -110. We then take 2%. So, you know, you're roughly -103, -104. However, if you are trading in and out of your position, we charge on the net position that you have. So if you take both sides of a bet, you don't get charged on half the bet that wins and not the half that loses. You get charged on the combined position, and it's 2% on all net winnings per market. That's what we call that.
Okay, you lost me on both sides. What do you mean about somebody being on both sides of the bet?
If you want to trade while the game is going on, right? If you want a live bet, so let's say you place a bet on a game. The Jets play the Browns tonight, preseason. Let's just use that for an example. If you're sick in the head like I am, you're going to be betting on that game.
Is there actually a preseason game tonight?
Oh yeah, it's the Hall of Fame game.
Oh my God! Wow, I didn't realize we were there already.
Oh, we're there. I can't wait. Anyway, it's pretty close to even odds, so I'm gonna use even odds as an example. If I take the Jets for $100 at even odds, I now have an outstanding position on the Jets for $100 to win or net $100, and if the Jets win, right? Let's say the game's going on and the Browns are up 3-0. The Jets look terrible. I want to get out of my position, right? I can then bet on the Browns at even odds. Let's just say they're even odds for this example, for $100. And if I bet on the Browns for $100 at even odds, and I bet on the Jets for $100 at even odds, I have a net zero position, because no matter what happens, I'm going to win $100 and I'm going to lose $100. We do not charge 2% on the side that wins. In that scenario, we charge on your net bet. Okay. And your net bet is 0 to win 0. So you would not be charged. That's what I was referencing with that.
So in that circumstance, I would be charged 0.
Yep.
And I don't have to be laying off the exact bet that I placed. I can be placing it with a new better.
Yep.
Gotcha. So now your typical bet, let's keep it real simple here, is, let's keep it Jets Browns, and let's say the game's -7. Wouldn't somebody typically put up there that, hey, I'm willing to take the Jets -7, and they're matching with somebody that says, okay, I'm willing to take the Browns +7, and it's 100 to win 100? Isn't that kind of the most standard bet? There's no vig because we're playing against each other, 100 against 100, except that profit exchange takes 2%, making it 102 to win 100.
Yep. Or 100 to win 98, whichever way you want it, right? Yes, that is exactly right. Also, I will note there that you don't need just one person to bet against one person. So we function similar to a stock market or an options exchange, where if you are offering a price, like you want the Jets -7 for $100, someone can come in and say, okay, well, I want the Jet or the Browns +7, but I only want $50. So what will happen is they take $50 of that bet, and then $50 is left open to another person to take.
So the biggest trick with exchange wagering compared to regular bet is, if I go on a regular sports betting website, I know that I don't need to worry about whether there's a player on the other side. I just go on and place the bet and I'm done, right?
Yeah.
So here, if I want to make a bet, how do I, I have to sit around and wait to see if somebody takes the other side of it, right? Isn't that kind of the downside?
That's exactly right. This is where it gets very interesting and complicated by the way it sounds. But if you go on our site, it looks and feels like a sports book, right? You are betting at -102, -101 instead of -110, right? However, in order to get to that point, we can't just roll out an exchange and say, oh, well, hopefully, 10 million people sign up and start playing on the site and everyone's requesting prices against one another, right? You have the age-old questions is the liquidity issue. How do you get the ball rolling? And the way you get the ball rolling, very similar to financial exchanges, is you need contracted market makers. And basically what their job is to price, put up offers or put up money on all of these different betting outcomes. The way they work is they have contracts with us that say they have to put up X amount of money at this time of the day and at this odds for this outcome. And then as the time changes, the money changes, and when you go on profit, you see exactly what it looks like. However, if you as the user go on profit and you don't like the odds that are available, you can request your own price, and then you will essentially be in the front of the line ahead of the market maker to then get that next bet filled by another person. So the party gets started, the ball gets rolling with these market makers, and then the people come in and fill it all in. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you're distributing to market makers odds, essentially saying, hey guys, we need liquidity on this. It's Jets -7. Who wants to come in on the Jet side? Who wants to come in on the Brown side?
Or even better yet, you can think of one market maker doing both. So they'll say, okay, the Jets -7 and the Browns +7. I will give users the ability to bet at -103 on each of those outcomes. So they have +103, if that makes sense.
Okay.
On the Jets -7 and the Browns +7. So on profit, you see -103, -103.
So
and if you don't like that.
Sorry. So that's what allows the market maker to make money?
Yep.
Gotcha.
Exactly.
So what we wind up with then on profit exchange is not for your typical player 100 to win 100. It's 102 or 103 to win 100. Plus there's the profit exchange take on it, commission on it, right?
Yep. That's exactly right.
It is, sorry. And does the profit exchange, does that show up right there on the bet? So do I see what I'm paying you guys?
That's right. Right in the bet slip.
So
full transparency.
So does it end up on average being more like 105 to win 100?
No, because when you get closer to game time, the prices get better. Also, you can request your own price. Also, it's tough for me to say because if you're just placing a straight bet, just one single bet, you'll shake out to closer to minus 103 most times on a spread. However, if you're trading in and out of your position, it's really hard for me to say because of that net 2% example I was giving.
But if it's just 103, how much is the market maker getting on that, and how much is Profit Exchange getting on that?
We get 2%. So let's say they're offering minus 103 on sides. And someone puts down $103 to win 100. The market maker is also charged commission, right? They're also charged 2%. So they have $100 to win 103, and the user has 103 to win 100. And then we just collect 2% from the winner. Works the same way.
Okay. Gotcha.
Makes sense?
Yep. All right, well, let's take our first break there. And when we come back, let's find out how Profit Exchange is able to be profitable under this, because all the other books are operating at 110, and you guys are figuring out how to make money at a much lower margin, just like I would like to see StubHub do. We'll take our break, and then we'll be back with Dean Sisun, co-founder, CEO of Profit Exchange.
We give game day a whole new meaning. What does it mean to be a leader?
It's taking my first solo flight.
At the University of North Dakota, we lead our own way.
Girl, you know it's been way too long. I got to get back in my zone. Hey. All right. Come on. 3, 2, 1. You know I'm feeling too good to be cooped up. Hey ladies, don't we look good? We came to have a good time, baby. I'm feeling too good to be cooped up. Me and all of my girls, we gon' tear it up.
And welcome back, everybody, to Double Down with Breslo. We're talking to Dean Sisun, co-founder and CEO of Profit Exchange, the first regulated and licensed U.S. exchange wagering platform, currently just operating in New Jersey, correct?
That is correct.
So tell us how you guys are doing.
It's been fun. I would be lying if I said that there weren't moments of very high level stress and nerves, but all in all, it's been a really fun ride. We're doing well.
When did you first start taking bets in New Jersey?
We took our first bet August 15th, 2022. So we're coming up on our first 1-year anniversary.
Okay.
Yeah.
And these market makers, which is, essential to your business model, right? So I assume you had those in place from the get-go?
We had a smaller one in place, I will say, and then we got another 2 larger ones sometime in the spring or maybe late winter. And our goal is to have more, because the more competition that's created amongst market makers, the tighter pricing gets and the more liquidity is on site and the better experience for the user. But that's something we're working on.
And do the market makers have to be licensed?
They do.
They do. And is this we hear about exchange wagering in Europe being much bigger than it is in the US, and it's mostly Betfair, right? In Europe.
Yep.
Is that, are you running it the same way they do it?
Very similarly. So there are a few exchanges in Europe and in Asia and all overseas. Betfair is the model that we've mainly looked after because of the way they treat market makers, because of the way they treat every user relatively the same. They've gone on a market making competition model as opposed to an internal market making model, which means they're operating somewhat as a sports book, somewhat as an exchange, because that promotes the best health for the exchange and for the user base. So we've largely modeled ourselves after Betfair.
Explain that last point you were making. What's the difference between the two ways you could work with market makers?
So if you think about it, you go back to the problem of liquidity, and the user comes on the site and they request a bet, right? What you can do is let that bet sit there and let a market maker take it or another person take it, or you can deem it necessary to take it yourself as the exchange. Now, there are instances where that's good for the exchange, right? And there are instances where it's bad. It's just a matter of if it's positive expected value or negative expected value. The trap that you end up falling into if you do this too much is you end up competing against everyone else in the pool for that money. And then you, as the exchange, have an unfair advantage. And then that funnels downstream to the user experience for customers and market makers. And then they end up being discouraged and they don't want to play. And it has poor effects. Betfair didn't do that. That is the proper model to follow. It's why they're so successful.
Gotcha. So you're saying it is permissible for Profit Exchange in New Jersey to accept a bet and take the other side, just like a regular sports book would?
That's right.
Uh-huh. But you're saying you're intentionally not doing that.
We avoid that at all costs because of the market making competition that we want to promote. Now, I'd be lying if I said we haven't done it in the past, because we're a tiny exchange, and in order to make the user experience better,
right,
you need customers to have their bets matched, right? But that was more of a customer acquisition play, not a let's go make a lot of money off our customers play. However, now we are fully focused on market making competition and so on. So that's where we sit.
And how creative does your site allow the player to be in suggesting a bet? In other words, does it already have to be a bet that you guys have listed on there, or can I type out what I want to bet on?
You can't. The short answer is you can get very creative, but you can't type out exactly what you want on the site. What you can do is write into us or tweet at us or DM us on Instagram or whatever you may like to do, and say, hey, I want to put up this market, this bet. And then we give you the ability, it's called Be the House. If you go on our site, you'll see a tab called Be the House. And if you want to request any sort of bet, you put it up, put how much money you want on it, you pick your price, and then boom, it's up there for someone else to take.
Gotcha. So it has to go into you guys first, and then you essentially have to approve it?
We just have to make it. Yep, exactly.
Uh-huh. And otherwise, if I'm on your site, what am I seeing? Am I seeing only bets on there that there's already action on that I know I can take, or things that are just offered on there that I would have to be the first one to propose a bet on?
You'll see both, but very infrequently will you be the first one coming in and setting a price, which is why we have those contracted market makers, right? So when you come on our site, you see money lines, spreads, alt spreads, totals, alt totals, all filled out with minimum liquidity on every price, on every outcome across a lot of sports. Right now we've got, well, it's August 3rd, so there's not many sports on, but there's tennis, there's UFC, there's Women's World Cup, there's baseball. So when you come on, you'll see all that. And then very infrequently, you'll see a blank market, which means you would have to come in and request the first bet or the first price, and then the liquidity gets rolled.
And what about line changes? Do you handle them any differently than a regular sportsbook would?
Well, the sportsbook changes prices themselves, right?
Right.
Because it's in their best interest to move the price accordingly, because they're trying to make money from their customers, simply put. We don't do any of that. So that is all on the user and on the market makers to change their own prices. It gets pretty tricky with live betting because it's much more fast paced. So you won't see as many users requesting prices and changing prices, but rather market makers requesting prices and changing prices. But Profit doesn't handle any of that.
So I can, as a market maker, I could take down my offer. Is that fair to say? So I'm okay. So, and that's essentially how a line would move, because let's say it's -7, I got $5,000 on there on one side or the other, but I'm not getting any action because the line is moved, or I don't want to take any action anymore on that side because the line is moved. So I'm going to yank it off and I'm going to put it back on at 7.5, essentially.
Yep. That's exactly right. They cancel it, is what we call it, and then they repost it.
All right. So back to my question at the break. How are you guys able to survive with such a thin margin? Because, we hear about how competitive it is out there among the sports books, and they're all handing out lots of free play. And, the cost of acquiring a customer is, $500, $1,000, this and that. And yet, you guys are playing in that same pool with much smaller margins. How are you able to do that?
So the name of the game is, how much do you spend to get a customer and how much money do they provide you, right? It's, if you put $1 into the business, how many dollars come out is really, the essence of running a business. And in our case, the way we see it and why the numbers on the page tell us that we're going to be successful is our unit economics are really strong. So if I put $1 into acquiring a customer right now, we're getting almost 1.5x back. And that's only in 11 months with, quite honestly, a product that hasn't been, in my opinion and in our team's opinion, very strong. We haven't had live betting. We haven't had the main deposit methods. We haven't had all of the sports that we should have. We don't have player props, right? So it was a limited experience for a while. We didn't have a proper homepage. We didn't have proper spreads and totals markets. Anyway, the reason I believe when I'm looking at the numbers on the page, we can be profitable is because the cost to get a customer onto our platform is 4 to 6 times cheaper right now than it is a sports book. And our customer lifetime value, if they stick around at the rate that it seems to be that they're sticking around, our LTVs are going to be pretty comparable to a sports book. So if you just chop down your CPAs 4 to 6x and your LTVs are relatively similar, that's a pretty good recipe for a good business.
So, and why are you guys able to acquire customers so much more cheaply than the competitors?
We actually have a value prop, is what I like to say. I know that sounds harsh, but there's 3 ways to compete in sports betting. You have your product, right? FanDuel, DraftKings, let's call it like it is. They have the best products in the market. They have the most amount of markets offered, so I can bet on the most amount of items. You can compete on promotions, how much money you spend to keep your customers. I believe MGM is spending 65% of their customer lifetime values on retention. And then number 3 is just by way of example. And then number 3 is price. So who's got the best odds, right? No one competes on that third element. No one competes on price because everyone has the same exact business model. Everyone is a sports book. Everyone takes between 7 and 10% margin on handle every month. If you'll see the numbers come in. Every sportsbook comes between 7 and 10%. No one is operating on a low margin scale. No one is trying to win on price. And the reason that our CPAs have been so low is that people who are price sensitive come and see our platform. The learned behavior gets them and they stick around because, I mean, look, I'm sure you're a sports bettor by the questions you've been asking me. Who in the world wouldn't want to bet at -103 every single time on a spread versus -110? You would have to be completely irrational. So that's why our CPAs have been much lower.
So you don't have to throw a bunch of extra goodies at everybody because they're there for the quality.
Exactly.
Okay. Why couldn't I or shouldn't I open up a sports book, which isn't player against player? It is the traditional model, and just offer everything at 105 to 100 instead of 110. Wouldn't I kind of get to where you are in the same way? I don't have to throw a bunch of goodies at everybody because my pricing is better.
Yeah, but you'll never be able to make any money. So with all the overhead you have, there's a reason why there is a graveyard of low vig sports books, and it's because the business model doesn't work. The lowest one I've seen is Circa. They sit at -108 at times, and their margins are 2%. I know that for a fact. If you were to operate at -105, think about all the costs that come into it. There's marketing expenses. There's the trading teams that you have to have. There are sports betting licenses. There's the product team and the engineering team. You're looking at a massive overhead bill, right? The reason market makers can come in and offer -103 is they don't have any of that. Mm-hmm. It's a lot easier for them to make money on low margin.
Yeah.
Because they don't have any of that overhead.
Yeah, one, the thing that just occurred to me too is one of the reasons you have the spread is because of the risk, right? That if you're a book, you're not guaranteed to have even action. So part of the reason it's 110, right, is not just to cover your cost, but to cover the fact that we're never going to have even money on both sides. And so we need that spread. You guys already, you're just taking a percentage. You don't have to worry about who wins or loses, right? That's the main difference between you guys and a regular sports book. Is a regular sports book on every game, they're actually rooting for one team or the other based on how the action came in, right?
Yep, that's exactly right. Actually, when you think about it, technically we're rooting for the underdog every time, because more money will go to the winners when the underdogs win, and technically we collect more commission when the underdog wins, right? Because 2% of plus 200 is better than 2% of minus 200. But at the end of the day, it doesn't move the needle much. So you're absolutely right.
Okay. And what about what I'll call the looming competition? Because Betfair has been out there doing it in Europe. They're part of Flutter. That's FanDuel. At any time, FanDuel could decide to turn this on and arguably bury you because they're so much bigger.
That's right. And you know what, the first question I asked myself before I started this is, why isn't Betfair doing this? So luckily I've already been through this exercise, God knows how many times in my head. It would take a lot of conviction for them to launch an exchange in the US. And that's because, number one, they already had it. I can dive into some really complex issues, but I'll spare everyone. Number two is, and really the essence of it is, if they wanted to come to the US, it wouldn't just be a flick of a switch of what they currently have, right? Number one, they would have to restructure what they currently have, because there are, I should say, the Wire Act is in place. So for every state that you launch in, you have to have a different liquidity pool. The Wire Act forbids interstate wagering. Someone in New York can't bet against someone in New Jersey. So that's number one. And number two, if they wanted to do that, which they probably could, but number two, it would take time. It would take a long period of time. They would have to go through the proper regulation. They can't just, use the same rules and procedures they have in place for a sports book. It's a fundamentally different platform with fundamentally different tax implications, fundamentally different wallet implications. So they would have to go through all that. And then three, the cherry on top is, they have a multi-billion-dollar business. They would have to rip up their roadmap and have so much conviction to jump in and do this. So then the question becomes, well, do you buy someone out or do you build it yourself? And I'm betting that they probably buy someone out. maybe us, I don't know. Unless we get big enough one day where,
But you buy them out.
Yeah, exactly. Tell them no, thank you. But yeah, that's the exercise I went through in my head before. We went through this.
Last question. You mentioned, taking bets out of state. Isn't there a consortium of states right now that have kind of gotten together to share liquidity? And isn't that a potential that it could happen? States could make deals with each other that as you guys get approved in other states?
So there is a safe harbor provision that's active in poker between certain states. I don't know about one that is live for sports betting. If that is out there, I'm about to Google this right after. But there are certain states that allow exchange play. I don't know if they allow interstate pooling, but where do you?
You know what? I'm probably thinking about the poker, the poker one. But if you can do it with poker, I mean, there's really no reason why I don't think you could do it with sports betting.
We need to tell the proper people in charge that, because I completely agree.
Yeah. And what's the most likely next state for you guys?
Great question. It is a state that is favorable for exchanges, I will say, in terms of market size and regulation. There are a few we are thinking about. I can't commit to anything right now because it changes so often in the sports betting space, and also it's a money issue, right? We're not going to go anywhere until Q1 24. Plan is to nail New Jersey and then focus on other states.
Cool. All right, my friend. Very impressive, and glad to see you guys out there and a startup American company. Love it. Profit Exchange, Dean Sisun, co-founder and CEO. Appreciate you coming on, and best of luck. We'll be following your guys' progress.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
All right. And thank you all for watching and listening to Double Down with Breslo. We'll be back soon with another episode. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
I want you to smash that like button.
Hi everyone, I'm Veronica Dudo, and welcome to Buy,
Hold, sell. If you have the Russians that are going into Ukraine, the Americans and the Germans and everyone else in Europe is going to say, hell no.
If Russia doing things, logically was their MO, I'd agree with you. Yeah, Todd, why don't you get him on a phone call right now? Hello, you.